Still with Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Now, let's talk about this guy last night or yesterday. Tahir Ali is his name. He is the Muslim Labour MP for Birmingham, Hall Green and Moseley. He's the one who stood up, well, we'll play him in a little while, who stood up and called for essentially a return to the blasphemy laws. He wanted the Prime Minister to bring in restrictions to stop the desecration of religious texts, specifically or especially the Quran. Basically, it strikes me he's the member for Islam. Isabel, what did you make of that, first of all? Kind of worrying.
Yeah, I think it's really very concerning indeed. I'm not at all sure why Tahir Ali thinks any such law is necessary anywhere, least of all in the United Kingdom. I mean, there are countries that take this to a complete extreme. Pakistan is a good example there, where they have all sorts of people on death row for supposedly saying things that insult the Prophet Muhammad and his wives and associates and so on. We don't need that in the United Kingdom. Of course we don't. It's one of our prized liberties, in fact, to be able to have the right to offend people in all sorts of ways and not to end up in prison for it, although unfortunately, as we've all known in the past few months, that's been tested to the extreme. But I really can't see what possible justification there could be. And I think, once again, it's very disappointing. Keir Starmer, who's reliable in one thing, and that is his ability to get it wrong every time, didn't just dismiss this absolutely out of hand, as he should have done at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. Just gave a kind of usual mealy mouth, oh, well, you know, offending anyone's religion is a terrible thing and none of us should do it. Well, you know, I would be offended if someone took a crucifix and broke it apart in front of my nose, but I wouldn't say they ought to go to prison for that.
Well, they've got to have the right to do it. I mean, I'm afraid desecrating religious scripts, I don't condone it. I would never do it myself, but it has to be legal in a country with freedom of speech. If you want to make some demonstration against the Quran or the Bible, I don't know, set fire to it in the streets, I'm afraid in 2024, in a modern country with freedom of speech and expression, that has to be allowed. And I would say to Mr. Ali, this is 2024, not 1524. Let's have a look at his background. In the 2020 Labour leadership battle, he backed dreadful lefty, alleged anti-Semite, she denies it, of course, Rebecca Long Bailey to be the leader. Remember her? He backed Angela Rayner for deputy leader. In April 2020, he was given a formal warning for police for breaking lockdown rules when he joined 100 mourners at a funeral. The West Midlands Labour Police Commissioner slammed Ali as totally irresponsible and added that he was not serving his constituents by endangering their lives. Pathetically, Ali said that he attended the funeral purely as an observer. Doesn't everyone? On February the 24th in 2022, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ali was one of 11 Labour MPs threatened with losing the party whip because they signed a statement by the Stop the War coalition questioning the legitimacy of NATO and accusing the military alliance of eastward expansion. He's a member of Labour Friends of Palestine and the Middle East. And during PMQs in January this year, he stirred controversy around the Israel-Hamas war when he asserted that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, bore responsibility for, quotes, the blood of thousands of innocent people on his hands. He had to apologise for that. I say I don't think this guy should be an MP.
So there's so much to unpick there, isn't there? You've read a very, very long rap sheet. I'm going to let him off attending the funeral. It was pretty unwise given his public status, but I think the preventing people from going to funerals during lockdown was one of the most appalling aspects of the whole handling of the pandemic. So I'm going to give him a pass on that one. Being an apologist for Russia, which I think is what you were basically saying there when you were saying that...
And blaming NATO for the Russian invasion.
I'm not going to give him a pass on that. And a bunch of the other things that you said are pretty worrying. I just think that it's a very, very concerning sign of the direction in which our politics is going.
Exactly.
The rise of sectarianism, the crushing of freedom of speech, and, you know, this whole kind of MPs who were not quite sure who they represent. And this is, again, it's a whole reflection on the wholesale cultural changes that are taking place as a result of the mass import of people from outside the EU. This is something we didn't talk about earlier, by the way. 86% of those legal immigrants are non-EU nationals. In other words, people from very, very different places to the UK.
Yeah, and by the way, Chris Philps, the Shadow Home Secretary, pointed out that there are now more than 1 million people living in this country who don't speak English. I would say that people who worry about the Islamification of Britain should worry about MPs like Tahir Ali. I say, you know, that basically he's the member for Islam and there's a problem there.
Well, I have a great respect for Islam and all faiths, and that's what we want from our parliamentarians. We don't want them to choose one over another. You know, it's great for all religions.
He does, though. He does.
That's the thing. He didn't mention anything about, you know, protecting Bibles, protecting the Virgin Mary, protecting those things that are precious to Christians. And that's what I would hope, that if he is going to make this argument, which I don't agree with anyway, he made it on a multi-faith basis, and he didn't do that. So I've got no time for politicians like him. It sounds like he's got it all wrong. I don't think it will go anywhere, but it is something we've really got to watch. A creeping repression of this is not what our country is about.
And apart from him, I believe we've got, I think it's 5 independent MPs who are elected on a ticket, a Gazan ticket, purely Gaza. So all of this is very worrying. Brilliant to talk to you, as always, Isabel. Have a great weekend. That's Isabel Oakeshott, our Talk International editor.